Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I have finished the slow stitching projects that I've been working on recently, so it's time to start something new, and I thought some of you might like to join in and stitch along with me. I'm going to be mostly using for this some of the gorgeous reclaimed fabrics I get in the bazaar scrap packs, but don't feel like you've got to go out and buy them if you've got lots of fabric scraps that you've been hoarding, as have most of us who like doing this kind of thing. Use what you've got, don't go out and get something specially. But if you have got the bazaar scrap packs and you're not sure now what to do with them, then this will help you, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is make a small quilt based on the idea of how you make string quilts with small strips. You can use really tiny scraps of fabric, but these are going to be much smaller squares than you would do in the normal way of string quilting, and they're all going to be hand stitched. There's not going to be any difficult stitching, it's all going to be very straightforward stitches, and I'll show them as we go along anyway. Something's irritating my nose today. Let me show you what I've got. So I've rummaged through some of the bazaar scrap packs that I've got and kind of decided on a colour theme. As usual, I've pulled out probably far more than I will actually use. What I kind of based it on is you sometimes get in the packs these pieces, and I like the idea of using this as a cover. And you're going to wonder, what do you mean a cover? Why do you need a cover for a quilt? I'll come to that in a minute. But I looked at this piece, thought I might quite like to use this. I'm going to pull my colour scheme from here. So I've picked up the kind of aqua, touch of green, the kind of magenta and purplish colours, and a bit of orange, which is a lot of colours, I know, but I like the way those work together. And I've pulled out some pieces that fit the bill. Come to these two and I'll put them out of the way a minute. So most of this has come from the bazaar scrap pack, so you get a mixture of cottons and silks mostly, but you do get some other synthetics like this one. So I've got some fine cottons like this. These are silks, more cotton. This piece, I love this, and I will be saving this to use for something, but the bulk of this to use for something specific. But what I'm going to do is trim that messy edge off and just use that for this project. It'll all make sense in a minute, I promise. More cottons there, different weights of cottons. Yeah, there's the cottons. That's a silk again, sort of, it's got a shirring elastic through it. Silk, bit of black just for contrast. So that's my colour scheme. And then there are these little bits of fabric. Now these aren't from bazaar, this is left over from the pack of loveliness that Jackie sent me. Thank you, Jackie. and that picks up some of that orange and pink and aqua colours in there. And then there's some really, really tiny bits like this and this, even like this. I think I'm going to be able to use tiny little snippets that I just couldn't bear to throw away because somebody has hand stitched that a little bit. I think I can incorporate all of these. Also ribbons. Now this wasn't bazaar, this has been knocking around in my ribbon box for ages. It's too short to do much with, but it's too long to throw away. I think I can use all of that kind of thing. Little short bit of sari ribbon there, tiny shred of fabric. All of these kinds of things can be incorporated in this. See, there's not a lot really I can do with that, but I can use it in strips to do this. Now this isn't something I've tried before, but it is, as I say, it's very similar. The way I'm going to approach it is very similar to how you would do string quilting with strips of fabric. There's this which I got as a freebie doodad in the bazaar, the last bazaar parcel that I got. So this is like a twisted cord. They've twisted it and then twisted the two lengths together to create this cord. 2 or 3 lengths. But actually there's no reason why I can't unravel it a little bit and just use a tiny bit of this. And because it's sheer, it will show other colours through, and I always quite like that, things one showing through another. I can even use really scrappy bits like that go in my orts jar. Even this tiny piece here actually would work. I might take bundles of fibres like this, I can't even remember where this came from, and have a go at doing similar to what they've done here, where they've got bundles of fibres of cotton threads and couched them down. So I'm going to keep that handy. You also get in the bazaar patch, you get doodads like this. Now what I've done is I spent pretty much the whole day going through all of my fabrics and reorganising them. So all of the bizarre stuff that I had, I've now, all of the doodads have all gone in here to keep them together, because it was just getting a nightmare. That was from a puzzle that Diane sent me. Thank you, Diane. But yeah, these recycled silk yarns and things, lots of beads, buttons and beads and things in there. There's some tiny shisha mirrors in there. Where are they? There they are. All of this stuff I can start incorporating into this hopefully glorious quilt. So that's my pretties fabrics. I'm also going to need threads, obviously. Now I have actually ordered myself some sulky threads, which should arrive tomorrow hopefully, but I've still got lots of these stranded cottons left. I've also got some of this was some hand-dyed thread from Steph Francis. She does these beautiful, that's where these are silkworm cocoons after the silk's been taken off them, and they're dyed the same as the silk. So I've got those. I think they might end up on some of my boho danglers when I make them. So I've got some no-sew ways of using these lovely fabrics coming up as well. I've got all sorts of ideas for those. So I've got threads like that, and I also thought I've got some of these I've had knocking around for ages, these crochet threads, and there's no reason why I can't use them for stitching. They'll give me a bit of a contrast in thickness and texture. So I've got all of those threads ready, and then the more sort of boring part, if you like, I need a base. Let me show you first. Now I've been looking at Linny's channel. I am Linny. Let me show you a minute. So this is lovely Linny. I will leave a link to her channel below. Do go and check her out if you haven't already. She's got all sorts of brilliant, inspiring ideas on her channel, and I thought this was a lovely idea. I'll put her on mute because you can go and check out this video yourself, obviously. But I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. She's made kind of a stitch sampler. So it's not a quilt like I'm going to do. It's a stitch sampler, but I love the way she's done it and kind of folded it up and turned it into a book. So I'll let her show you. So here we go. She's got a cover on it. And then rather than it being a book, it kind of all unfolds. So I'm going to do a quilt that kind of a little bit bigger than that. I'm going to pinch the idea of folding it all up and then folding it together into a book and making a cover for it. But the cover won't just be on the front. I'm going to make like a wraparound cover with one of these pieces, because I'd love to use one of these pieces, and I will probably stitch further into these pieces myself as well. That's my idea at the moment, but these things have a way of developing as they go along. So need the basic nuts and bolts of it. I'm going to use small squares like this. This is a 2.5 inch square. I just happened to have this. I think it was packaging for something, I can't think what, and it actually measures 2.5. I tend to usually work in centimetres these days. If you want to work in centimetres, it's 6 centimetres, and I'm going to cut 48 of those squares out of this plain blue fabric. Now this was amongst the bundle I got from Contrado. I'll leave a link to them as well. If you're in the UK, you can get a 2 kilogram bundle of fabrics from them, and they're big pieces. I've already cut into this. I've done a couple of projects with this already. They're big pieces, clean, nice and folded, and beautiful pristine fabrics. Their business is printing your own design onto fabric, and these are ends of rolls that they can't use. So for £5.49, which just pays for the delivery, you can get a 2 kilogram bundle of fabric from them, and this is what this is. But you could use anything. You could use a pillowcase for this, whatever you've got. I'm gonna use these sizes, but if you've got another piece of fabric that's ideal to use but a tiny bit smaller, just adapt to what you've got. So the fabric that I'm going to make the small backing squares with needs to be 20 inches by 15, or 48 centimetres by 36. Having said that, this is only for separate squares. So what you could do is use, because you always get Now I haven't got any here with me. You always get some plain cottons in with the, I mean I could use that. But if you've got any plain cottons in there that are sort of quite, I mean last time I got some that was just a plain brown cotton, you could use that. They don't all have to be the same either. It's just I happen to, I've got lots of this fabric, I might as well use it up. What I'm saying is, in my gabbly way, adapt to use what you've got. Don't feel you've got to go and get anything specially. So first thing I'm going to do is make myself 48 squares. They'll either be 6 centimetres square or 2.5 centimetres square. I'm then going to need that piece, same size piece of fabric to use as a backing, but we'll come to that later. It doesn't have to be the same fabric, it can be different. So it's again a question of use what you've got. So what I'll do is I'll make my squares, then I'll stitch them onto here. I'll do decorative stitching into them, and then I'm going to want a final backing, and that's where I'm going to use this piece of tie-dyed cotton. What I'm going to do now is just cut myself one, it's probably easiest just to tear a strip, and I'm not going to be too pernickety either. You know, I think it's going to be quite forgiving, this. Now, shall I go centimetres or shall I go? I suppose I might as well use this card, and it'll save me having to get a ruler out, won't it? So that's edge has already been torn, it should be straight. Let's see, hopefully I can just tear this strip and I'll get a 2.5 inch strip. Pretty good. And then snip again there. Okay, so I will tear several strips like that and tear them down into squares until I've got 48 squares like that. And then I'm going to take little strips of fabric. Now what shall I start with? Ooh. What should we have first? What about a bit of this? Quite like the idea of using a bit of that. Well, now my first strip has got to go diagonally across there, so that won't be long enough. That's just about long enough. It's way wider than we need. Now, I like frayed edges, and I'm going to deliberately fray this piece all the way around. If you hate frayed edges, you're a naturally tidy person and you're not going to like that, you can just cut your strip slightly wider and turn the edges under. I want all of my strips to be different widths, and I will probably overlap them as well, and then I'll be adding stitching over the top. So each little square is going to be a separate little work of art, and then when we put them together, they're going to look different again. You're going to get an unexpected pattern because you can't really plan it at this stage, and that's going to be one of the things I really like about it. That will fit in across there probably. Now if you were making a traditional strip quilt, you'd get another piece now. Let's get a contrasting piece. You'd get another piece now, another strip, put it right side down, stitch it along there with a sewing machine and turn it over like that, and then you do the same again, so you get a really tidy edge. So you could do that, and you could just hand stitch it along here, turn it over, and then let's get another piece. Get another piece, put them right sides together, stitch along there, turn it out, and then you'd end up with really tidy, neat edges. I don't want to do that. I like the frayed edges, as I say, but it's very much personal taste thing. And I might even decide I want to do some of them like that. So now I'm going to pick my thread. It's up to you whether you want to do a coordinating thread or a deliberately contrasting one. I think I'm just going to use 2 strands of the embroidery cotton at the moment, the stranded, because the first thing really is to get all of my strips down, and then when I've done that it will be time to go in and add more decorative stitches. So this is just going to be plain running stitches. Well, that reminds me of something I kept out when I was rummaging through trying to choose my fabrics. I kept this out to show you. Look at this. This is one of the pieces that came in one of my bazaar packs. Look at it. The colours are beautiful, and look at the stitching. So it's 2 pieces of fabric sandwiched together with these tiny, look how neat that's. My slow stitching is never that neat, and I did think I might end up incorporating this into the kind of cover of my fold-up journal. So yeah, we'll see. So I did say to Lily, that's a brilliant idea. I hope you don't mind if I pinch it and put my own spin on it. And she was quite happy with that, so that's okay. Well, I've just put a knot on the back. The back of these individual squares isn't going to show, so I'm just going to do tiny little running stitches all the way along to anchor this down. And I'm going to quickly throw this one together just to show you what I mean, and then I'll probably take it downstairs and do a bit more sort of embellishing on it. You could, if you felt happier, you could tack it down, just do some huge basting stitches first with all the pieces, or pin it. I just find pins get in my way, just sort of annoying, and tacking stitches, well, I don't know, I'm just too lazy, I think, really. And if I do tacking stitches, I'll quite often just leave them in, even the basting and everything. I just quite like the look of it. And you find once you get used to it, you can pick up several stitches at a time like that and pull them all through at once. Even on, this is quite a small needle. That piece I just showed you so shows up my stitching. And now I'm going to add another piece. Bit of orange, a bit pink. Put some of these, use up some of these little tiny pieces. A bit of this. So with the pieces like this, I'm going to save this for something special. I'm going to save it for special, but I'm just going to trim off this lower edge just to tidy it up, and then I can use all these trimmings in this little quilt. And if you didn't fancy doing the fold up book idea, when we get to the end, I'll show you different ways you could do it. You could back it and put it on a rod to hang it. You could just stretch it over a piece of mount board or something and frame it. Different ways you could use it. You could turn it into a journal wrap. So I love that even this little offcut piece, I just love that, and I can't ever throw these tiny bits away. So this is where they'll fluff all over everything. I can use this, you see, I can just put it there. Perfect, isn't it? It's going to be, I can just use up all of these odds and ends, which I love. I love that I can do that. Okay, I'm going to have a piece of this now. And I'm just cutting it a little bit longer than it needs to be, because I can trim it back off square afterwards. And that's really wider than it needs to be, you can see how much of that there is there. So I'm just going to tear that into, I think I can get 3 strips out of that, and take one little piece of it. I can leave it crinkled as well, doesn't matter. I'm losing my frayed edge now. And then when I run out of this thread, I might choose to go to one of the other colours in my scheme, the blue or the pink perhaps. I'm not stitching this very well because I'm trying to do it really quickly so I can show you what I mean. And if you've seen people doing, or you've done yourself, string quilts, you'll know that once you've got a whole lot of squares with these diagonal stripes on, when you then put them together you can arrange them in different patterns, so you get all these unexpected combinations. I think it's brilliant fun. Okay, that's that piece. We ready for this bit now? No, not quite. We need another bit of something along there. What about a bit of something pink? A bit of this maybe. There's going to be a lot of umming and ahhing. Oh look, this will do. Perfect. It's a little bit too big, but never mind. I'll see now. I want to put it there because it's long enough to go there, isn't it? And I'm wasting it if I put. I'm wasting a bit. Put a bit of that. Oh yeah, let's put a bit of that. Okay. See, so even if I had a tiny end of ribbon like that, I can use it. I've got some of these kind of leery metallic ribbons that I got in the bazaar packs, which I'm not terribly keen on. I didn't know what to do with, but I thought, well, actually, little tiny glints of them stitched into these little squares. I think that'd be quite nice. You can imagine that if you're just sitting there with a big, big pile of stuff like that to rummage through, you're not in a hurry, you're not trying to do it in front of the camera, it's actually going to be quite a relaxing process, I think. and a really nice way to use up those tiny bits. And you know, my plan is to do some more decorative stitching once they're all stitched onto the inner backing. It's kind of going to be two backings. I'll stitch all the squares onto one piece and then I'll back that with another piece. My plan before I put the final backing piece on is to add some more decorative stitching that will kind of link the squares together. But you wouldn't need to do that. You could do the whole thing just with nothing more than running stitch like that, and I think that would still look lovely. I mean, look at that, you know, that's just running stitch and it just looks beautiful to me. There we go, 2 layers of fine silk stitched together, and it gives it a lovely feel, more body and a kind of just a unique sort of feel. I love it. So that's those pieces. So then what I will do is, once I've filled my whole square, I will trim around like this. The tiny trimmings will go back in my orts jar because, you know, if nothing else, I can stuff things with these trimmings, you know. And when I come to do the decorative stitching, that's when I would also add things like beads. I wouldn't do that at this stage. So you can see where I'm going. I'm going to carry on cutting squares and then covering them with strips of fabric and ribbon, and also just with running stitches at this point. I think that's probably enough to cover for this video. If you would like to join me, gather your bits and bobs together and join in. I will pop back every few days and show you how I'm getting on, and then hopefully, I don't think it'll be too long before I'm ready to start assembling it and move on to the sort of decorative stitching stage and then the backing. And then at that point it'd be a case of deciding whether you want to get it framed or do it as a hanging, or turn it into a journal wrap, or do that thing that Linny did and make it fold up kind of into a book, which I thought was really cool. So I will leave links to Contrado, because if you're in the UK, you know, it's worth having those freebie fabric packs. I did find one that was in the States that seemed to do the same thing, but a couple of viewers mentioned that they'd had a look and the postage was a bit prohibitive, so it's kind of not free anymore if you've got to pay a load of postage. But for £5.49 and you get next day delivery, yeah, well worth doing. So I'll leave a link to them, and I will leave a link to Bazaar, and probably most people watching this will already have heard me raving about them before. But if you don't know, if you order from Bazaar, there's a space at the end at checkout where it says add a note. If you put, I'll put it up here, if you put Arty Farty Annie treat in that little box, they will send you a little doodad with your order, or doodads, depends on what they've got and what you've ordered. Really, it's just a little something, it's just a little treat. Little things like last time I got one of those balls of recycled silk yarn. I got a little pot of, we're near an airport, just wait for that to go. I got a little pot of sequins one time. I got a little pot of shisha mirrors, little wooden stamping blocks. Very much depends on what they've got. So I will leave links to them because they are brilliant. But as I say, don't feel you need to go and get something specially, because this is the idea. This is to use all those scraps and things that we've already got. If you've already got a Bazaar pack and you don't know what to do with it, or you want an excuse to get a Bazaar pack, look no further. Okay, so here's my little piece so far, but I think that's going to grow quite quickly. I think I'm going to enjoy it as much as doing the Kawandi quilting. In some ways it's kind of similar. I'll get into this next time you see me. I will have done a few squares, and then I will perhaps have come up with a few more ideas to share with you. So yeah, grab your bits and bobs and join in. The other thing I'll leave is my link tree. So from there you can find a link to the Discord community. That's getting very busy, all sorts going on in there. We've just introduced a weekly challenge. That was Dawn's suggestion, made by Dawn23. Hello Dawn. Suggested we have a weekly challenge in there, so that's fun. And all sorts going on in there. And also there's the Arty Farty Annie Facebook group. So in either of those places, you know, you can share pictures of what you're making, and if you're joining with these projects, it's a lovely way to show me how you're getting on, because I always love to see that. Okay, stop waffling. Thanks very much for joining me, and I'll see you again really soon.